Warning, the following podcast is intended for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is advised. If you are sensitive to any content or subject matter in films, I recommend looking up this film on doesthedogdie.com. It is a user-based database of extensive content warnings for pretty much every film you can think of. It basically gives you a heads up to all the potentially triggering topics a movie might have. Check it out and take care of yourself. Welcome back to We Creeps. I'm your host, Evan Exhumed. And just like before, every week I summarize and review a different horror film for people who are a little too squeamish or easily spooked to watch them, but still really enjoy the plot and often end up looking them up on Wikipedia or Googling the ending explained. We, of course, welcome horror movie fans all the same. Have I ever told you that you're my hero? Today we will be going over a film that I believe is a Shudder exclusive. It's titled Psycho Goreman, made in 2020 by Steven Kostanski. It stars Nita Jossie Hanna, Owen Meyer, Matthew Nienaber, Stephen Vlahos, Adam Brooks, and Alexis Hansey. This one is really funny. I like it a lot because it's kind of like a really fucked up Power Rangers. I saw it months and months ago and somebody had recommended that I do an episode on it, and I thought that it would be perfect. So I definitely recommend watching this one. It can get a little gory at times, but it's very silly, like Evil Dead 1 and 2 kind of silly gore. It's just totally off the walls, and it definitely pays homage to a lot of the Power Ranger kaiju type of Japanese animation and TV shows and things like that. So let's dive into this 2020 banger, Psycho Goreman. So the movie starts with a little Star Wars credit type scene, and it lets us know that Psycho Goreman, who we'll be calling PG for this podcast, and they called him that in the movie, was basically a alien going around trying to conquer shit. And then he got imprisoned by like a council of space aliens who, stopped his evil wrath, but he eventually escapes. We then jump to Earth with our main characters, Mimi and Luke, who are a pair of siblings. Mimi is probably around 10, and her brother Luke is around 12 or 13 or so. They are playing this game, which is basically Calvin Ball, but they call it Crazy Ball. I don't know if you read the Calvin and Hobbes comics, but it's basically just a game where you just keep making up rules as you go kind of situation. It's very silly. And I guess Mimi, if she wins, she gets to bury Luke alive. And so we fast forward to later that night where he is actually digging his own grave. And, I don't think he would actually go through with it. But I mean, I'm pretty, it's a dedication there that I'm seeing. While digging, Owen ends up finding this like weird glowing device thing. And Mimi's like, hold on, let me mess with that. And she does like an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pattern, and somehow is able to unlock the gem. But before anything happens with the gem, they get called inside to go to bed because it's past 9 o'clock from their parents, Susan and Greg. Both the kids get tucked in and then they go to bed. For the record, Mimi is hilarious. She is sort of like an Angelica-like character from the Rugrats. She's just like kind of a really confident, huge brat and just kind of shits on her brother all the time. So that's a really huge part of her character and what makes this movie really hilarious. So overnight, the hole that was dug in that general area, we see Psycho Goreman, PG's, hand pop out of the ground. So it looks like this device somehow awoken him or summoned him or something. And so now we have the titular character, PG, appearing. We then jump to a homeless camp, and they're just talking and just chilling out in a warehouse. And PG comes in, and they are like, "What the hell is this thing?" And he's like, "You are a primitive creature speaking in primitive languages." And he freezes two of the guys in midair. He then immediately rips their heads off. Very silly, lots of blood. The last guy he kills says, "I don't want to die." So PG says, "Then live forever," and puts him in this like hellscape mind psycho loop thing where he just essentially lives in hell and dies 1,000 deaths just in his mind. So that's a power that Psycho Goreman has. So the next day, the family goes back to the giant hole, and the dad is like super funny in this. He just says the most off the cuff shit. And he's just like, you did dig a really big hole, Luke, but I am really proud of you. And the mom's just like, I don't give a fuck, just fill the damn hole. We then jump to Mimi and Luke going to school. Luke wants to go to the police to talk about the situation, but Mimi's like, fuck that. You better not say shit. And then they run into their buddy Alistair, who Mimi has like a crush on. She even says to him, like, wow, that outfit looks really good on you. Why don't you give us a little spin? Which is kind of hilarious and a little creepy to hear a 10-year-old say this to another 10-year-old. Later that night, Mimi and Luke go back to the hole and see that there are footsteps or like a trail that leads to the large warehouse that PG had entered earlier. So they go ahead and follow that and enter the warehouse, and Mimi is just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm ready to beat the shit out of somebody. And this little 10-year-old girl starts screaming, being like, we know you're in here, you creep, show yourself. They then run into the remains of all the houseless people here. And it's very gross, but PG comes out and is like, little humans, I'm going to torture you. Immediately like levitates Luke, but then Mimi sits there and is just like, first of all, fuck you on the spaceship you rode on. You're gonna shut up and leave my brother alone. And the little gem that's in her pocket activates, revealing that the gem is what controls PG's powers, and essentially whoever has that can make him do anything that they want. It's called the Gem of Praxidus. So using the gem, Mimi gets PG to do a bunch of silly things, makes him run in place, do jumping jacks, I think, at one point, and they decide that they need to give a name to this person, as he has not given himself a name. He's said that people have called him a destroyer of worlds and things like that, so Mimi and Luke spend like 30 minutes to an hour trying to figure out a perfect name for him, and they settle on Psycho Goreman and PG for short. They then command him to just sit in the warehouse by himself until they come back, and Mimi and Luke leave, and Mimi's like, bye, and just bails. So Luke is like, yo, this is a really bad idea. This dude is definitely going to kill everyone if we don't figure something out. And Mimi's like, no, I think he's just going to basically become my new best friend / pet. We then swap over to the Templars, which are led by this alien holy knight Pandora, and they learn that PG has been released, so they plan on killing him and imprisoning him or something, and they're all really perplexed on how someone was able to decipher the code to release him, because it was some crazy advanced pattern or something that they had come up with, and it's just hilarious that a 10-year-old girl was able to figure it out. So Pandora, the head of the Templars council thing, summons a random human and turns her into a meat cube, and uses the meat cube to turn herself into that human so that she can go down and try to get the gem back so that they can control and contain PG. The next day, Mimi, Luke, and Alistair go back to the abandoned factory to meet up with Psycho Goreman. They brought a TV, some magazines, some books for him to help him learn a little bit. Mimi also apologizes that she wasn't able to find him any pornography, but she gives him, like, I don't know, a Men's Health magazine or something. And he's like, I cannot believe that you are looking at this stupid waste of time. And Mimi's like, yeah, but look at all the hunky boys in there. And PG goes, I do not care for hunky boys. And then looks at like an underwear model ad and looks at it again and goes, or do I? And so at this point, I think that we can safely say that Psycho Goreman is, in fact, a queer icon, a bi icon, possibly a gay icon for this. The kids end up asking PG, what is he? Where did he come from? And PG sits down on the couch begrudgingly because of the gem's powers and begins to tell them about the tale of his entire life. PG was born on the planet of Gygax, and his race of alien or something are essentially born into servitude and slavery, working in these like mines or something, and it's just lots of pain. He has a lot of anger towards the Templars and the council that imprisons people like him. One day, he stumbles upon the gem that is very powerful and puts it inside himself, and it gives him crazy powers, and he's able to take back Gygax, and he develops an army and goes on a intergalactic quest to essentially enslave and murder everyone else. because he's got a lot of trauma, it seems. And so what happens is the Templars are able to actually steal the gem back and use it to control him, and they imprison him on Earth, I guess. And so now we're basically caught up. And after that whole story, Mimi is just so fucking funny. And she's like, well, I'm kind of sleepy and I need to take a nap or something because that story was so fucking boring. And so the kids just all leave after that. After they leave, though, PG uses the television to send a message to his old army or people in his little group or whatever to come and rescue him because two children have stolen his power box, or his power gem, rather. The kids and Alistair have a family dinner with Greg and Susan, and Greg is fucking so ridiculous. The characters in this film are just all very odd and say really silly things. Like, Greg was in charge of dinner and he's like, hey, did you notice anything different about the chicken that I made tonight? And they're like, I don't know, it's kind of tough and dry. He's like, yep, microwave will do that. And so it's just, I mean, you really got to watch this movie. I mean, there's just so much funny dialogue that I can't really give to you secondhand, but it's definitely one I definitely recommend just watching. So the boys go to play video games or watch YouTube videos or something, and Mimi goes outside to sit on the swings by herself, pouting that she doesn't have anyone to play with. However, she just remembered that she had an intergalactical death space lord, PG, so she summons him to come play with her. And it's actually kind of funny. She's like, what took you so long? And he's like, time is a human construct, blah, 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 blah. And also I got lost. So Luke and Alistair come out and are just like, what the hell? Why'd you bring him here? This is a really bad idea. And Mimi's like, I want them to play with me. And I have a crush on Alistair, basically. And PG's like, I once used my powers to help some random Lord Emperor fall in love with a princess. She's like, I don't want that. I just want him to play basketball with me. Can you do that? So PG actually ends up turning Alistair into a fucking giant brain monster with tentacles, which looks very unpleasant. And the parents see this, and Susan, the mom, comes running out with a baseball bat and tries to hit PG with it, and it breaks. And the husband comes out and screams, oh God, my lucky bat, and starts to yell at the mom before realizing that there's a giant space demon just standing there. So the parents are obviously very concerned, and Mimi's like, no, PG's just like a big old silly goof. He's actually a real softie. And the entire time that Mimi is saying these things, PG is just like, I will kill you, I will kill you, I will kill you. And like, I will bathe in your blood once I become free of your daughter. And then we go into a montage, which includes a band composing of Mimi on vocals, Luke on guitar, Alistair, the brain monster, on keyboard, and PG on drums. They then create one of the greatest songs in horror history, Frig Off. And during this montage, we see Mimi, Luke, and sometimes Alistair just walking around with Psycho Goreman and just people reacting to him very poorly. They even take him for a little fashion wardrobe change, so he gets some clothes, looking real cute, PG. At one point, they go to a diner, and we learn that PG's culture or something to be eaten is a great honor if you lose in battle, so that will come up later. However, as normal, Mimi is being kind of a dick to her brother Luke, and PG notices this and is going to try to create a divide between them. So PG enters the mind of Luke while he's sleeping and is like, hey, if you betray your sister and help me get the gem back, I will likely not kill you once I have gained my power. And Luke, being a homie and a good brother, is like, yeah, I can't do that, sorry. And PG's like, well, she's kind of a bitch to you, so do you think that she would do the same for you? And he's like, probably not, but she said finders keepers, so that's the rules. And so PG's like, you're stronger than I thought. And so the dream ends. The next day, they are at the school playground, the basketball courts, and Mimi and Luke are teaching PG how to play crazy ball. And they go off into this long tirade of just all these ridiculous rules that really don't make any sense. And at the end of it, Psycho's like, I did not understand any of that. And suddenly, the police show up. So the two cops immediately pull guns on PG, but the guns do not work. And PG turns one of them into some weird demon hellspawn thing that is just melted and in a lot of pain, but still slightly resembles a human. And he's like, here you are, Mimi, another person for your crazy ball game. And he lets the other cop live to warn police of this, crazy demon, and so that they don't bother them again. So kind of a win if you don't like cops. Meanwhile, Alistair, the giant brain blob, is there, and he just starts to sort of leave the situation. And Luke is like, oh, I guess Alistair's done for the day. And so Mimi runs up to him and is like, hey, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, do you think I'll ever be normal again? And Mimi's like, probably not, but I like you just the way you are. And she kisses the giant brain. And then you just see him sort of like hobble off into the distance. The kids, PG, and the new cop demon slave thing go into the forest and have some conversations. Luke teaches PG a little bit about love. And, they bond a little bit. Not very much, because PG hates them a lot. We then jump to the police precinct, and Pandora, the Templar queen in the human body, comes down and asks the cops if they've seen PG. And the one that escaped tells her, that he saw her, and then she uses this weird, mind thing to absorb all of his memories to find PG. So while they're in the forest, all of the people that PG called earlier show up, and he's like, cool, thanks for coming, guys. Can you kill these kids now? And they're like, actually, you're kind of a dick, and things have been going pretty swell on Gygax since you have been imprisoned. So we're just going to kill you instead. And so PG goes to fight them, and Mimi uses the gem to stop him and says, hey, you told them to kill me, so let's see how you like getting killed. And so the monster people, who all look like Power Ranger villains, which was just chef's kiss, just beat the shit out of PG. She then forces him to give a good apology, and once he does, she lets him beat the shit out of these guys. And so PG gets powered up by the gem thanks to Mimi giving the okay. And there's a really fucking badass Power Ranger-esque action scene where PG just murders the shit out of these 5 or 6 Power Ranger-ass looking motherfuckers. He also ends up eating the last guy to give him an honorable warrior's death. However, PG is pretty injured from all of this, and he sends a message to the parents to pick them up on the side of the road. It's like a weird psychic demon message. Meanwhile, before the parents get the message, we see that they are fighting, and Susan, the mom, basically tells off Greg and says to him that he's a lazy piece of shit, and Greg just keeps saying some weird off-the-cuff stuff. So the dad, Greg, picks them up in the pickup truck and throws PG in the back, and as they arrive back to the house, the weird Templar angel lady thing, Pandora, is standing there with Susan, the mom. So everybody kind of gets into a little bit of a squabble here verbally, and Mimi and Greg and PG drive off, and Luke has decided that he can no longer deal with any of this, so he sides with Susan and Pandora, the Templar queen. Greg and Mimi take Psycho Goreman back to the warehouse, and he is, not doing very well. He's laying on the couch in some blankets, and he says that the only way for him to really heal himself is to use the gem. So Greg is like, hey, PG, can I have a little moment with my daughter? And so he gives Mimi this heartfelt speech about making the right decision, and how when he was a little kid, a creepy guy asked him if he wanted to see his baseball cards in his van, and he actually went into the van and was shown a lot of really cool baseball cards, and nothing happened. So the dad gives her the worst advice imaginable and says, maybe you should trust your creepy friend. Meanwhile, back with Pandora, Susan, and Luke, Pandora transforms back into the Templar angel thing, and then transforms Susan into also a weird angel thing to help stop PG. Back at the warehouse, Mimi is thinking over her decision, and she prays to Jesus. And it turns out she's actually just praying to Jesus about which sunglasses she should wear. And she says, actually, I already kind of knew the answer. Jesus, you're a piece of shit. There's a new god in town. It's Psycho Goreman, and we're coming for you. And she breaks the crucifix in half. So we stan Mimi. I mean, I firmly am a believer of women's rights, and I'm also firmly a believer in women's wrongs. And Mimi is women's wrongs personified. Mimi realizes that she does not have the gem, and suddenly Luke, Pandora, and Susan blast into the warehouse. So everybody starts to fight. Mimi and Luke are struggling and, wrestling with each other. Susan starts to strangle Greg a bit. She's feeling a little mad about how Greg's kind of a lazy piece of shit. And PG and Pandora are fighting, and she's about to kill PG, but he stops her and says that if you are a true warrior, you will accept my formal challenge at a battle that I deem appropriate. And so she agrees to that, and PG requests that Mimi choose the way that they will end this battle. And of course, Mimi chooses Crazy Ball. Mimi and gang win against Luke, Susan, and Pandora. However, Pandora is still pretty pissed about this, and she tries to kill PG anyway. She also tries to kill Mimi, but Susan stops her. Mimi tries to convince Luke to give her the power gem, and he's like, I'm just not sure if I trust you. I feel like you're always mean to me, call me a lot of names and stuff. And then Mimi just starts singing the Frig Off song, and PG is just really confused, and Luke seems to be digging it though. And PG looks to Greg and goes, "Is this love?" And Greg's like, "Yeah, it is. Start singing, buddy." And they all sing Frig Off, Frig You, and it's a beautiful moment, I gotta say. So yeah, this makes Luke happy, I guess, and he gives the gem back to Mimi. This allows PG to regain his power, and he and Pandora have a battle. Pandora says that PG cannot defeat her because she has a special holy blade, and PG's like, you know what, I'll just make my own. So he runs around her and rips out parts of her body and organs to create his own gore sword, which is pretty badass. During the battle, Mimi and Luke do make up, and she does say sorry in their weird Morse code thing that they have. I forgot to mention it because it wasn't super important, but yeah, she doesn't say it, but she does it in Morse code. During the fight, Pandora actually ruins some of the men's magazines that PG beloved, and this gives him the final bit of strength, and he screams, "Not my hunky boys!" And he gives her one good slash, defeating her. As he is about to finish off Pandora, he accepts the name Psycho Goreman as his title, and he gives Pandora a warrior's death and eats her alive, to which she is pretty upset about, but the family seems pretty happy that, they've saved their buddy PG and the family is safe. So all of the characters meet outside of the old factory, and PG throws the gem to Mimi, and she's like, "But I thought you needed it." And he says, "It turns out that I didn't need it after all, and I always had the power of love," or something like that. I guess love was the thing that really Psycho Goreman needed to take his, intergalactic quest to kill everyone, to the next level. So Mimi blows him a kiss, and he catches it and, takes the kiss and says that he will be off and that he's, obviously not going to kill them. But, Psycho Goreman does have a little bit of character development here. Oh, yeah. And I guess the parents kind of make up or something. I mean, it seems like their relationship is still a complete disaster, but overall, it seems like they're going to stay together, which is, good for them, I guess. Funnily enough, though, Psycho Goreman just goes through a portal and begins to terrorize the rest of Earth, I guess, and just, destroying cities and killing people and stuff. But hey, as long as he's not killing the family. We then jump to Alistair's family, and they're just eating dinner, and we see Alistair, the brain boy, just sort of slowly creep up to a chair and begins eating dinner with his family. And then the credits roll. Just, fuck Alistair, I guess. He's just a brain forever. And that's the end of the movie. So pretty silly movie. It's one that I definitely recommend you see. Get some friends, get some drinks, maybe get some drugs. I don't know, whatever you do. Just it's on Shudder, super funny, really over the top, and just Psycho Goreman again is a queer icon. I mean, his love of hunky boys is one that I feel very connected to as a person. So that's the end of the episode. Thanks so much for listening to episode 24, Psycho Goreman. Please be sure to support the podcast by following me on all of my socials. I actually am now hosting the podcast episodes on YouTube as well. So if that's where you prefer to listen, it's available there now. I also have merch, which you can find at tpublic.com. They're size inclusive. The customer service is really great. And while I don't really make much money from it, it is a great way to show others that you love the podcast. I also still have Patreon if you wanted to support the podcast directly. And that's about it. I hope you have a really great start to your week. And don't forget to stay hunky out there.